Yes, indeedy. Third hour of the program. Going to be with you straight through until noon. We got so much news to get to in this third hour. The hits will keep on coming. I promise you that. We're going to start off with this one. Now, Quebec is spending millions to subsidize hundreds of foreign English-speaking students through a tuition discount program meant to strengthen Francophone ties. That was the Gazette reporting this one this week, that despite the government's push to limit English education in the province, students with French passports who may not speak French or have lived in France, they're benefiting from this lower tuition. And it adds up. Over the past 5 years, Quebec taxpayers have spent an estimated $26 million on these students, many of whom chose to study at McGill and Concordia. Let's go to immigration lawyer Patrice Brunet, always a great voice on subjects like this. Patrice, welcome back to the show.
Good morning, Elias.
Listen, I imagine that, when you design a program, there will always be loopholes. But how would you describe the size of this loophole geared towards, Francophones in France and Belgium, but who are not Francophone, don't speak a lick of French?
Well, let's put that in context. I mean, this agreement between France and Quebec goes back to 1978, and it was to nurture relations between France and Quebec in order to favor student exchanges between the two countries. It's always been heavily in favor of Quebec, meaning that more French men and women come to study in Quebec than the opposite. But there's a fair number of Quebecers who go to France as well. It's citizenship based. It's not language based.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful when we react quickly by saying, well, yes, of course there are some French nationals who don't speak French and who benefit from this, and they may be in the U.S. They may have multiple citizenships. It could be American and French, and they may use it. But it was really not necessarily, as French is really a hot topic now.
Yep.
In 1978, it was a hot topic, of course, but it was mainly to favor the education and the cultural relations between the two countries. So that agreement is consistently being renewed every year.
But just Patrice, because obviously what the path this leads me down is that for students from the rest of Canada, right? You're from Alberta, you're from British Columbia. The Quebec government has made changes that ding you more. And I just find it unbelievable. You could have someone from Alberta who's done, French education. There's lots of French immersion in the rest of Canada, right? And right now, they're at a disadvantage to someone who's from Ohio that gets a French passport, So I guess that's what sticks out to me like a sore thumb.
Yes, and rightfully so. Now, again, I'll just put that in perspective because it's a cultural agreement between France and Quebec. And what's happened only recently, over the past, I think, 3 years, is the Legault government decided to decrease the subsidies from the rest of Canada students who come to Quebec. Now, if the federal government or provinces want to negotiate cultural agreements with Quebec, that's another topic of discussion. But the reason why initially this agreement was between France and Quebec is because French students pay very low tuition fees in France. So in order to entice them to Quebec, the fees had to be much lower as well in Quebec. Uh-huh. Otherwise, they wouldn't pay $30,000 a year. If we take it back to your Alberta student who comes to Quebec, the Alberta students used to benefit. Let's say the Alberta student comes to McGill. They would consistently pay the same fee as a Quebec resident. So the Quebec taxpayers would be subsidizing that student from Alberta, mm-hmm. and Quebec has among the lowest tuition fees in Canada. So I'm not defending the Legault policy, but I can understand it, that students would come from Alberta to Quebec, get a medical degree, and then 6 years later go back to Alberta and practice medicine there. And the Legault government was scratching their head, and they were saying, well, why would Quebec subsidize students from Alberta to practice medicine there when they're not staying in Quebec to pay their taxes afterwards when they work? So, but I'm totally in agreement if there was a either federal government who would subsidize those students from other provinces to come to Quebec, but is it really for Quebec taxpayers to pay for students from across Canada to come in and have lower tuition fees that are subsidized by the Quebec government? That's a question.
With Patrice Brunet, immigration lawyer. Wouldn't this, Patrice, though, be an easy loophole to close? Like, just say, well, the qualification isn't you have a French passport, because, like I said, anyone from Ohio that's got a French grandparent can get that passport. Shouldn't they just change it? You have to have an address in France, and you live there the last 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is. Couldn't they fix this really easily?
They could easily add another layer of qualification. You're right, because it's a cultural exchange program. So they could add that layer, and it wouldn't be very, very hard to do. So maybe someone's hearing it, but let's also put things in perspective where there's, out of all the French national students who benefited from this program, we're talking about only 4% of them who don't speak French, who have come to Quebec and benefited from this. So it's large numbers. You quoted them, millions of dollars, but at the end of the day, it's only about 4% of them.
Patrice, do you get the vibe from your chair in your office that Quebec is perceived as anti-Anglo? In realms like this, I mean, I know for our listeners, they're going to say, well, of course we're anti-Anglo. But, you know what I mean? From your chair, your perspective, immigration of students around the country or around the world, is there a perception that's out there that Quebec doesn't want English speakers?
A little bit. It's the message, public message that's being sent out. But it's not. It doesn't. You have to distinguish from the party in power who's sending that message, and from the Quebec society in itself that is welcoming to English students. So I think that there's a little bit of that, but there's also another element of elections will take place in 2026 in Quebec. Let's see if the population still endorses that position from the CAQ, or if they go in another direction.
Patrice, got to leave it there. Thanks for hopping on today.
Thanks, Elias. Have a good day.
Immigration lawyer Patrice Brunet right there.